Help support this channel and get early access to videos plus exclusive content and patrons-only live discussions by becoming a member at patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette. I have Lisa Loving on the Zoom call today on a, I feel like, fortuitous day. We're gonna be, you're gonna be speaking at World Press Freedom Day, and one that's just, congratulations, that's really exciting. We were gifted some red meat in the news feed today. I kind of wanted to touch on with the news of Tucker Carlson and Fox News parting ways, and Don Lemon being officially fired from CNN. And before we, because I love talking about how the media sausage is made, so I think those are some great portals. But before we get in that, I have a more general question kind of based around that, because I'm starting to get a particular compliment, like, often, that it's genuine but also concerns me. And I wanted to ask you, as the person who, the first person to really give me a shot coming out of college, because I'm pretty sure you get this a lot. And I wanted to ask you how you might respond to this. But people are starting to tell me, I don't watch the news, I don't read the news, but I listen to you. And on one hand, it's like, thank you. I appreciate all the support I can get. And, thank you for, seeing me out here. But also, there's that concern of, like, if you're only, if it's just me, or it's just like, people commentating out here, but in a world where the news industry is dying and the information gap is genuinely hurting people, there's there's an issue there. So yeah, I'm curious, as someone who's been doing this, who's received a bunch of accolades, who's been around here, how do you respond when you get those again, genuine shows of support and compliments, but also the other concerning part?
We do mental health really badly in the United States, and we have a lot of mental health problems on almost every level. And if you've ever gone to a therapy for depression, the first thing a therapist is going to say is stop watching the news. And that is a fact, right? So a lot of news, a lot of how we take in information is relational, right? So if there's someone that I know and trust, like you, I'm going to spend more time listening to you and then thinking about what you're saying as I take in other things, because I need some sort of a North Star, if you will, to begin to follow what I think can be productive information as we live in our society. I mean, to me, the United States, Canada too, it's a post-apocalyptic landscape. I don't know if anybody read the 1619 Project or tuned into it, the 3-part documentary, but if you're African American or Native American on these shores, this is a post-apocalyptic landscape. And for me, it's important that people keep that in mind. People like me, white people, middle-aged white women, people who come from my family's tradition, so many things happen to us and around us that we never even saw. So none of this is new, actually. And Juan Gonzalez, who was a co-host of Democracy Now! Years ago, he co-wrote one of the most wonderful reference books called News for All the People. And I encourage everyone to pick that up. It's probably 10 or 15 years old now. It's probably meant as maybe a college resource. But he talks about how, actually, when you look at the history of media in what we call the New World, it was me, myself, and my ancestors. It's only new to us, really, in a lot of ways. But we talk about what was going on in Central America, South America, the United States, Canada, all of what we call now the Americas. The very first printing press didn't print stuff in English. We don't talk about that. We don't even know that. Juan Gonzalez, and there's a co-author whose name I don't remember, but they talk about how the first newspapers came from, it was people who had a printing press. people who own the means of production that were actually printing other things. But when they looked around, they thought, maybe we should be printing more information and selling that too. Maybe that's a way of monetizing our business. And when you look at some of the very first printing presses, the very first newspapers were community papers by freedmen, by people who were immigrants, by people who were Spanish speaking. And I'm talking about the 1500s, even I almost cursed there, a long time ago. Really encourage people to go back and pick up that book. You might need to check it out at the library. There might be a PDF of it. But as a matter of fact, when you look at it that way, printed media actually had a more similar creation to the internet. People who have a computer, people who know how to code could actually go out and create media outlets, and people did and have ever since. But the roots of who we are as media outlets is not what a lot of people think. And what I love about, I've been doing this work around, I'm going to reach for my book. I put out a little book about, sorry, that was awkward. I put out this book because I want to encourage people to learn the tools of media and take your own place in how information moves. And there's so many ways to do it. And it's also true that there are these things called heuristics, right? Heuristics, Heuristics, I mean, and they're basically the ways that our minds work, especially when we don't have a lot of time to think about what we're doing. I like to think of them as brain farts because that's what our brains do. Heuristics are, it's how our minds work. And there's so many ways our minds trick us into not freaking out, and always have since cave person days. So, you know, that idea of the universe rearranges itself to support my beliefs, that's a heuristic, right? It's a mental shortcut that doesn't necessarily serve us. So I feel like there's all kinds of reasons why people might trust certain kinds of news and not others. It's predictable and it's understandable, and we can actually kind of work with it. Also, though, I live on Twitter. I'm going to admit it. I spend too much time on there. And anyone who knows anything about media right now knows that Twitter's on fire. Well, our country's on fire, but Twitter's on fire. This billionaire guy whose name I don't even have to speak his name here. He's just in there ripping it up and blowing it apart like a SpaceX rocket, right? Mm-hmm. And so now there used to be this system of blue checks where people who were verified, like the New York City Garbage Department, or even the New York Times, or, you know, municipalities, individuals, bureaus, businesses, all these people have had their blue checks removed. And there's all sorts of confusion about it. In the past week, we're kind of talking about how do you trust the news? How do you kick the tires on a piece of information to figure out if it's real or not? But in the past week, like now there's 3 different New York City garbage departments, and no one can tell who the real one is. And oh gosh, I said it. Okay, Elon Musk has gone in there and arbitrarily glued some people's blue checks back on, but not everybody, like famous basketball players and stuff like that, but not New York City. And Elon Musk, we're talking about World Press Freedom. World Press Freedom Day is May 3rd, coming up next week. These things really are connected. Elon Musk, I believe, is from South Africa. He's from someplace far away. He's not from here. Not that that matters. Not that that matters. But I want to strongly encourage people to think about pulling the camera back and looking at global systems of media control and money. Because, okay, I'm going to freak you out. I want to pre-apologize. I personally want to suggest to you, Rupert Murdoch, his family, Fox News, the story of what happened there, the story even of what's happening with Tucker Carlson, that's a story of colonialism. It's a story of world press unfreedom. Okay? Mm-hmm. This stuff, okay, I'm just going to jump into it. Tucker Carlson, we've been allowed to see some of the interworkings of Fox News through the the Dominion lawsuit that just culminated. And by the way, there's a couple more lawsuits coming up, right?
Yep.
That could be fun. Who knows what's going to happen? And we watched, we learned that all kinds of things through the discovery phase of the lawsuit about how we learned that Tucker Carlson was texting people that he despised Donald Trump, right? But then he was going to lie just for ratings, basically. We've seen the top, what seemed like the top, I'll say talking hairdos on that network, the curtain pulled back about what they really think and what they really think, and then what they really have done in their actual information flow, the information so-called that they're putting out there. When I was on Twitter this morning, I was just watching some wackadoodle guy just going on and on about creation, his religion, and how God's going to come and sort it all out, and the leftists better watch out. And I mean, all I could think is all I have to do is see his blue check mark to know what's going to happen next, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to be petty about it. Some of this stuff is predictable. But what I want to say is Tucker Carlson, Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, this is a story of colonialism. And I want to strongly encourage people to look at what's going on with the media in the UK, to look at what's going on with, and you're going to freak out right now. Guy going to be King Charles, right? The coronation of Charles. What happened with the redheaded prince and Meghan Markle? That stuff tells the whole story. What's going on there tells you everything you need to know about what's happening with Tucker Carlson, maybe Don Lennon too, right? It's about super rich, super powerful people. They may be here, they may be there, they may be in Australia. They don't have to be in this country, but it's people with mega interests and mega power that are pulling the strings behind the scene. And this is colonialism. I mean, it really is in its most bald-faced. And I know I meet so many people who say, oh, that's just hyperbole, colonialism. I watched Hamilton and la, 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 whatever. No, this is real. And this is now. And I'm going to stop for a second and take a breath, because I took notes on this, a lot of notes. A lot of people don't. It's easy to laugh at the royals, so-called, right? It's easy because they're like caricatures, right? But what they're doing right now is about murder. It is murder, billion-dollar fortunes, undue influence that comes from continents away. For real, that's real. And that is what we don't want to believe. Even I sometimes don't want to believe that our media is controlled by some jerk from Australia and his creepy sons. I mean, okay, I'm just going to be honest about that. The Murdochs don't, they're on the other side of the world, but they really, actually, really, truly do control a lot of what we see, even if we don't want to watch Fox News, right? And then we're watching how many people are murdering people with guns because they show up on their doorstep. Well, what are they watching on TV?
Fox.
You know what I'm saying? It's a really ugly nerve that goes through all of this. And I guess I'll say it again, this is colonialism and world press freedom. Like, how do we even guard against it? I like to encourage people. I'm just going to touch base really briefly on this event I get to do in San Francisco.
Oh, wait, can we just pause 1 second, because I want to dig deeper into that.
Oh, it's a rabbit hole.
I want to put in some more context when we're talking about colonialism, specifically in regards to Fox, the Rupert or the Murdoch family, but then also understanding that I feel like a lot of people don't realize, again, because we look at someone like a Tucker Carlson, some of these other, faces on camera as clowns in some way, or either as clowns or as just, they're not, how can I put this? Like,
serious.
It's they're unserious, yet, like you said, it was the most watched show on cable news, one. And two, with Tucker Carlson, I think the context that, again, he's the heir to the Swanson family fortune, Swanson family broth and all that stuff you see at the store. Like, part of the reason he's able to be as ridiculous as he is is because he never had to worry about money. Like, and I say this as someone who got into journalism partly because was able to stay in it because of privileges I was afforded. Like Tucker Carlson is like set. So being fired from Fox News or any like actual penalty if it came was never a worry. Never mind. There's also the fact that like, you know, you can do the Don Imus thing or do the completely independent thing now. And if he chooses to do that, he's going to have some other big audience, whatever. So the idea that this is Tucker Carlson going away, because I feel like some people might read this news as that is not the case. But yeah, when you talk about colonialism, these are people with the money to be able to do this, to be able to blatantly play to, like, it's not just, oh, I'm entertaining white supremacists. Like you said, they are the direct line between someone shooting a kid for ringing the wrong doorbell. And in any of these instances, whether it's been with mass shootings, with, you know, these just clearly racist, like terrorism against people, like people will say, I watched Tucker Carlson in the interviews afterwards. People will say, like, they got these lines from watching Fox News. Like, it's not even like we're not speculating here. This has happened over and over and over again. But they can do it again because they know there's an audience that is going to pay for it. They know that getting fired or any like, there's not any actual consequences or meaningful consequences to them and their comfort for doing this. And like I said, they control such a huge share of not just, you know, the quote unquote market, but even if you don't watch Fox News, you could care less, you don't pay attention to media, you are responding to Fox News. And I think it's because I tried to have this conversation with people about sports media because I think it trains people to do the exact same thing, where you have personalities who are, again, considered clowns by many people. Is they do, you know, their opinion screaming shows during the day, and you may not watch them. But if you're having a sports argument, guess whose talking points you are debating or debating against? It's these same people. And I can point to the difference in like 15 years ago in how we did this versus now and draw that exact line. But people don't see it because, again, they see the clown on TV and they don't think further, because why would you? I didn't learn media literacy until college. Why would anyone who didn't go to school for that or go to school or, you know, go to higher ed or have access to higher ed just inherently understand that? Of course not. And it gets so I say all that to kind of bring it back to why I think like the work you're doing specifically around citizen journalism is so important, because on one hand, you know, I think the idea, like you said, people don't watch or, you know, therapists will tell you not to watch the news for a reason. I know when I was working in the office, you know, when I was a reporter and we shared an office, I know I had a panic attack during one point of that. And that was when I was doing the news, reading and trying to keep up on as much news because I thought it was my responsibility to have as much information as possible. And I realized I couldn't keep up with that. But also, I don't, you know, if people don't understand how this works and how it's influencing them and their decisions, it's like that's an issue too. And I'm trying to, and what is the, you know, answer to that? And like you said, empowering people to want to understand how it works, be able to take the news into their hands, because, and I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna take a breath as well here, is when people tell me to the point of like, hey, I only listen to you, like that's great. But then I also, you know, I bill my show as the world's most dangerous infomercial for a reason. I am not, please don't look at me as the one responsible for giving you all the news, because I don't have the capacity to do that. There's certain things that have happened in these, even this last like month or so, whether it be, you know, like demonstrations, you know, big, like, you know, grand openings for Black businesses, stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, I can't be Coin6 News and come and do this. I literally have another meeting right now, so I can sign this contract that hopefully will make sure I can pay my rent for the rest of the summer. Like, like that's real. So it can't just be, I worry about that when, even with the support, where it's like, it can't be, it can't be like individual news superheroes out here, because that will, even if you try, you'll burn out. So anyways, I'm gonna stop. It's a whole other rant about this, but yeah, let's talk World Press Freedom Day, May 3rd.
One of the things that brings me to this part of why even talk to people about how they can not hate the media but become the media, as Jello Biafra said, is that so many of us just feel so unempowered. And a lot of social media, which really is the tool that we have to interact with big wigs and media, it just feels like gravel on the side of a barn sometimes. In 2020, George Floyd was murdered by the police in Minneapolis, and in the city of Portland, Oregon, one of the whitest towns in America, for 200 days, people went out into the streets. Like, this was historic. It was unbelievable. And in some way, I just still think about that. And we're still seeing stories roll out about it. How did we even learn that these things were happening? It wasn't from watching Coin, love you Coin, whatever, but it was because we saw, we did it. We did it. We went out there. A lot of people, just everyday people, took their phones and watch and videotape whatever was going on, because people couldn't even believe it. Not just that folks kept showing up day after day, but because of the overreaction of law enforcement. Donald Trump even sent the dank super hit squad that he had created for the border over here, right? It was isn't it called the BORTAC? I think that was a turning point in communication and a turning point in reporting. But again, we don't even have enough reporters or media outlets or whatever on the ground to even talk about that. My personal theory about trying to teach people the tools of journalism is not that most people are going to do it, but when people learn how it works, they can use more critical analysis to understand what it means, where this information came from, right? And I see, I don't want to be down on the Portland Police Bureau, because that's a very crowded room. But I remember them putting out pictures of, these are the projectiles that were thrown. I'm not going to laugh. These are the projectiles that were thrown at us last night. And there was like a can of Red Claw, or a can of the Claw, a can of booze. And people looked at that, and after experiencing live coverage that was done by their neighbor or their brother or their classmate, people could have a better sense of what was real and what wasn't. And at this event I'm going to have next week in San Francisco, we're just going to talk about tools that everyday people can take, because I also feel strongly that everyday people, especially teenagers, need to be able to become information gatherers for their own sake, but also for everyone's sake. And these tools are not brain surgery at all. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the reporters that came out of the Black Lives Matter protests in Portland, Oregon, and where are they now? And I don't even, some of these people their video landed at MSNBC, CNN. Some of the local Portland people, their video landed on Fox News and the New York Times and all of these things. It was a moment where people covered their own local community, and it really did impact the whole world. I think it did. George Floyd's uncle, or was it his dad, thanked the city of Portland, which is, I never thought I'd see the day, right? There's a lot of simple tools, concrete tools. And the other thing is that the tools change all the time. The more we do what we do, the more the tools change, and you always have to be able to go with it and teach yourself how to do it. Autodidacticism is teaching yourself how to do things. But the other thing is, and now I want to jump back into the Tucker Carlson rabbit hole if I could. We could talk more about this event maybe at the end of this interview, but these are old patterns. They're ancient. And when I look at what is going on and what has happened with Rupert Murdoch in the UK, that's the perfect example. A lot of people watch this show, Succession. Never watch that, y'all. It's about the Rupert Murdoch family. It's a big drama. It's about them.
It's actually wild to me.
Yeah, look it up. Don't take my word for that. Okay, look it up. I
like
know.
People, I hear. Sorry, I was just gonna say. Like, I see people who, you're gonna get, like, if I mention Fox News, are understandably gonna get viscerally angry, but are diehard watchers of Succession are like,
that guy died. He died. I know. And I don't want to be rude to people or rude about people. We have to find our joy where we can and our distraction where we can, but we need to connect the dots because that stuff's real and it's getting done to us. I was helping my daughter move yesterday and I got confused about the doorway in the apartment complex. And I have this armload of stuff and I'm like, oh, I got to put this down. Oh no, there's a doorway. Move along, move along. Like for a minute, I was like, no, you don't stop in front of somebody's doorway. That's Fox News. That's Rupert Murdoch doing that, right? This stuff, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Okay, so I want to just shift the focus and let's go to England. Let's go to England for a minute. Fox News in the UK, it's all about the dynamics of power and influence that control the broadcasts and the pages. We might sit here and we're stuck in this place where we bicker about objectivity. Dan Rather, bring back Dan Rather. He was so objective. By the way, he always editorialized about the war at the end of the broadcast. God bless him, whatever. Just don't give me that Dan Rather thing. I mean, I'm not against him. But I just want to jump into England right now because colonialism, part of what keeps us down, part of what keeps us fighting like crabs in a barrel and living on the street and getting addicted to opioids, right? I mean, this is really concrete. Part of the reason that there's more guns, people own more guns than there are people in this country. There was a gun show where a child killed somebody with an automatic weapon because they thought it was cute to try to the trainer thought it was cute to try to train. This stuff is big. It changes, it impacts our whole lives. And I have to say this. So less than 10 years ago in England, Rupert Murdoch family owned this thing called, was it the Mirror? What they owned this big news. It was the News of the World, the best-selling Sunday newspaper in the UK. Okay. That paper was eventually shut down because of accusations of criminality by the reporters and the staff. And the question became, how high up the chain did it go? So there were multiple instances where reporters for the News of the World hacked into phone message machines to try to get scoops. And the one that really always stands out to me is that they hacked into the phone of a missing child who it turns out had been murdered, but the family thought she was still alive because they could see somebody was accessing her voicemails. It was reporters for News of the World paid by Rupert Murdoch.
I remember that.
And so literally the News of the World was linked to criminality, and it was shut down completely. Look at what just happened with Fox. Like, did somebody somewhere learn a lesson? What we want to do, we'll pay $789 million, but we won't be shut down, right? Just keep your mind on that. Follow the money. Keep your mind on the ball. Right now in England, there's this huge movement to abolish the monarchy. I swear, I promise you, all of this is linked. I promise. If you really want to understand what's going to happen next at Fox, take a look at what has already happened in England. There's a huge movement to abolish the monarchy. This year, this is only like April, almost every labor union in England has been on strike. They had a massive strike, a couple of a coordinated strike a couple of weeks ago. We didn't even read about it. Who cares? It's England, has nothing to do with us. going to sing something from Hamilton again. I like that musical, but it bugs me. Anyway, the abolish the monarchy is a growing movement. And so what happens? Meghan Markle, who is that? You may ask. She's the African-American woman who basically started dating the redheaded prince. I don't have to remember his name. And they fell in love, and they decided to get married. And all of a sudden in the British media, not only were there terrible, terrible stories about her personally, but we've also actually seen Jeremy Clarkson, these media figures, call for violence against her. Let me be crystal clear. There were media figures who called for violence against Meghan Markle specifically. At about the same time, was this last year, the year before, when Harry is the redheaded prince, Harry and Meghan decided that they were just going to totally withdraw and go and live their own lives in the United States. Why, you might ask? Harry, the redheaded prince, he's the son of Lady Diana. And now we're like, oh, wedding dresses. Oh, my hair, it's so well fluffed. But no, check this out. Lady Diana was dating Dodi Fayed, not a white guy. She was going to marry that guy. He gave her a great big ring. And then the next thing everybody knew, they were dead. They had been chased by media and crashed the car. The redheaded prince, a lot of people actually blame the royal family for that. I mean, I get that some people don't care. Like, why do I care? Oh, come on. That's just a bunch of gossip. You know, what's on TV right now? Succession. But Diana is remarkable because she called out the duplicitous lying of her husband, Charles, who's going to be the king now, and his mistress, Camilla, right? Now we're in like Henry VIII territory. Right? Now we're reaching back hundreds of years into British history, but it's like we're still saying, come on, that's just tabloid fodder. That's just gossip stuff. But Diana coined the phrase, the firm, to describe the royal family. This is actually a big deal. The firm, they're not a family. They're a gigantic global business that accepted money from Osama bin Laden's family for their many charities and whatnot. So what am I talking about now? What am I talking about? When we look at what's happening with Tucker Carlson, probably Don Lemon too, we don't really know who's pulling the strings. And it's easy to say, God, it's just tabloid. This is just gossip. Check this out. Last September, the New York Times did a gigantic expose on where did Charles get all of his money. At that time, Prince Charles, right? Now he's going to be King Charles. He's going to ride a golden coach. Stop. Anyway, I just want to strongly point to that coverage. I think they did a whole package about it. Charles himself personally is a billionaire, and his money came from where? Colonialism. All the properties that I don't remember, are they the Windsor family? I don't remember his name, his family name, but all the properties they own, the crown jewels themselves, the original crown jewels that we always joke about, all of these were stolen from foreign countries, stolen from poor people for hundreds of years. The crown that Queen Elizabeth wore had the Koh-i-Noor diamond in it. Look it up, man. The Koh-i-Noor diamond. It was stolen from India. It's worth $20 billion. We're not just talking about gossip. We're not just talking about tabloids. This is real power. This is real money. Anyway, so the story is that Rupert Murdoch and his family and a couple other of these British tabloids, their biggest sources of gossip from Buckingham Palace are actually the royal family itself. Charles, I forgot the oldest son's name, the crown prince. I forgot his name. I don't even have to remember it, but it is known, it's been shown a million times that it's the family itself that's leaking all this information about the African-American princess and the red-headed prince who's still mad that his mom got murdered like that, right? We saw Harry. I'm talking about Tucker Carlson, really? We don't know what happened behind the scenes, but we can imagine. A bigger issue is, who are the super rich people that we don't know who they are? Anyway, let me finish though. So Charles comes out with this, like a manifesto, his memoir last year. That thing was the hottest. It's like one of the hottest selling books ever. It's up there with the Bible, for real. And there's plenty of people who looked at that, and just to literally see, where is the power? Where is the power coming from? Where is the power flowing? And where does the money come from? Meanwhile, when Charles and Camilla, the guy that's going to be king, and his girlfriend wife, you know, Diana famously said, well, our marriage was very crowded. I'm mocking her, help me. But now when they go out in public, people spit on them. People are expecting that when Charles is crowned in the gold carriage and the 800-year-old, who looks really beat up, throne that Henry VIII sat into, that people are going to riot. So they decided not to use the big crown that Elizabeth wore that's got the Koh-i-Noor diamond, because they think that people are going to attack them. Look it up. Don't take my word for that. They think that if they're too showy, they're going to be attacked, because they're already being spat on. So Camilla's going to get a crown that's only worth $20 million. Whatever, man. Just look into the crown jewels and look at where that came from. This is colonialism that affects what just happened to Tucker Carlson. It affects what's happening on Fox News. For real. The Koh-i-Noor diamond, all of the money. Forbes magazine just did an expose like 3 days ago about how much money the royal family is worth. And you should look that up. All of it stolen from poor people in other countries. So let's bring the camera back to the Dominion lawsuit. The Dominion voter machine company, this cracks me up so hard. And then now there's going to be another voting machine company that they get their chance to sue Fox News. It's interesting to see how Fox News is ready to pay. Is it $800 million? I'm so bad with numbers. Like, I will never be able to count that high. You couldn't count that many bottle caps. You'd be crushed by them. To them, they could literally pay a king's ransom, but they're still in business.
They don't even have to make a retraction on air. That's like, I expected a settlement, because they don't want to, like, actual court case with Hannity and Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, you know, having to get on the stand. But that was the no retraction part.
Right. No retraction.
Just moi. Wow.
After all that's out there. And the fact that I'm seeing people who are speculating and encouraging Tucker Carlson now to run for president, that says a lot. Just want to switch the camera back a minute to Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle is actually a certified genius. It's interesting when we think about the billionaires in our society and the best and brightest people. We don't think about Rihanna. Rihanna is a billionaire because she's such a great businesswoman. And she not only was a recording artist, but she created a makeup and beauty empire that is aimed at all kinds of people. She built that herself, right? In a different way than you might say Zuckerberg or the Amazon guy or whatever. And Meghan Markle, she really is, and she's a genius. And she famously had a lifestyle blog. My daughter watched the Suits show. My daughter used to watch that show, and she loved that show. We never talked about it. I never watched it. I don't watch a lot of TV, but Meghan Markle. So she had a lifestyle blog. I forgot what it's called, with millions of followers. And that's what she kind of gave up or put on ice to marry the redheaded prince. But she is one of the best and brightest people. We don't even know what she's going to do next either. So when we see people that are waving around Tucker Carlson, what he's going to do next, don't always look at the bouncing ball. Think about looking at some of these women of color who are out here, who don't get the credit for doing the work they do. She's fascinating. She's not going to be at the crowning of the royal family, because she's getting like 3 or 4 different mega lifetime achievement awards from like the Ms. Magazine Foundation. It's like people, I just want to encourage people to just look under the hood, look a little further. Don't be distracted by the hype, by all the balloons and stuff. The redheaded prince is interesting because, you know, in his autobiography, it's called Spare, because he was the extra kid. Nobody cared about him. You're like, what a great family. That's why it's called Spare. But he actually he invented this this global sports event that's like an alternative to the Olympics, and it's called the Invictus Games. The Invictus Games, and it's for veterans. It's for war veterans who have disabilities to compete in really incredible sports. He's beloved all over the world. He was the guy that actually learned. He was an actual soldier, you know, and we can say this is all tabloid fodder, but just take a second look. You should follow the Invictus Games too. They have wheelchair soccer and all kinds of cool stuff. People, and it is global. Amazing, fascinating stuff. But yeah, the Queen's Crown, Tucker Carlson, this really is, all of it is linked. If I'm sitting there helping my daughter move in Southeast Portland and I'm scared of somebody's apartment door, it's because of news that came from Fox. And Rupert Murdoch is able, with his Netflix comedy drama or whatever, to stay relevant in this country where in England he failed. So he's evolving, right? Anyway.
I mean, that's just to, sorry, cut you off, but
no, not at all.
Kind of just like frame it for people, because I think a lot of people just get overwhelmed with all the details, all the information, and in some cases it's kind of like unavoidable because the world is like a complicated place. It's also some of these stories are actually very simple. It just has a lot of details, but it all comes back to, like you said, it's not just gossip. This is, look at the power, you know, because that's the real story, is who has the power, what are they doing with it? In this case, we're talking about using a massive international media empire to misinform people, and in a lot of cases, misinform people in a way that leads to very real harm on various levels. But I think, especially with, we talk about Fox, you talk about Tucker, Rupert Murdoch, it's actually, let me pull that back, because I like something subtle that people watching this may not notice that you were doing there and talking about this, is talking about let me switch the camera back here. Let me switch the camera back here. And I want to highlight that also, just because, again, we're talking about understanding how media works, not because, like you said, not everyone's going to be, you know, going to be a citizen journalist. Not everyone's going to go into media in a way like, you know, I'm trying to do this as a career, or even, you know, even just like covering kind of what's happening around them. But why it's so important to understand this stuff, why it's so important to even understanding how stories are made, how people are making their money. Said, you know, people are going to be focusing on, God forbid, Tucker Carlson runs for president, but, you know, let's I talked about having a panic attack earlier. That's not going to help. But you know, again, like focusing how people make their money, focusing how, and you know, Princess Diana being chased by the media into a literal, you know, deadly car crash, and understanding the way we consume this media, because I think it's what's been wild about this case, and it's happened before with Fox. I think maybe even the more egregious one, or one that just stood out to me, was, you know, the various Alex Jones suits, where he's in court telling people, yes, I am lying to you about the water, or, you know, fluoride in the water turning you gay, or frogs gay, whatever that was. Never mind, you know, mass shootings, and lying about families, saying families are crisis actors. But again, he's in court on multiple occasions and said, yes, I am lying to you. Has that stopped? And, you know, he's been pulled from these platforms for, not because out of the goodness of their heart, out of liability. Has that actually stopped the viewers? Has that stopped people from, buying the what are we gonna call it? Well, no,
Drinking the
yeah.
Kool-Aid.
Oh, I was gonna say literally buying the dick pills he's selling on his show, but that too. But again, with Fox, we're gonna see the same thing. It doesn't matter whether it's Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity or whoever. Yeah. We have already crossed that line where they can say, yeah, I'm not telling the truth, or I did this, or I did that, or these shady things happen behind the scenes, and their audience doesn't care. And that's we talk about because I guess for me, I'm kind of more of like the I feel like I take more of a just a rain cloud approach to some of this. Like we started the conversation off just talking about sort of like that relational aspect of media and how it's just like people listen to people who they can trust, who they feel like they have more of a relationship with, which kind of takes me to like Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon, who are again TV personalities, talking heads, bloviators, but they have established this relationship with their audience where people will keep watching them. They've all had various weird, dangerous scandals, and especially in the case of Tucker Carlson, but that because there's so much information, there's so much happening, that these are the people that literally millions are going to for information. It's like I can't even call it a scary prospect because it's happening. It's real, and there are real effects from it. And yeah, it kind of keeps bringing me back to, so what do we do? Because I feel like I'm, as I look at the problem, I'm just like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, and a constant, and also trying to, do more stuff around media literacy, because I do think that is an answer. But even the prospect of trying to get people to, one, feel more empowered with media, but two, just understand why this is important and why this subject that is not the sexiest tabloid subject in the world, why you should care. And it's not like media literacy is the only place we're doing that. Obviously, that's all across. But it's such an uphill battle, even in stuff where there's more infrastructure. Like you brought up just union stories, the strikes. Anytime a union, especially in the US media, it's interesting how that how it plays out and where people default to when they're consuming those stories, because we have this construct of like, ooh, the union people, they're trying to scam the big owners of the business.
More expensive. They're going to make everything work. They're going to drive up. I think that a really super important thing to keep your eye on, and anyone who's listening or watching this right now who feels like their head's going to explode, start looking at the trends of voters. With this, really, Tucker Carlson, Dominion lawsuit, the redheaded prince in the UK, these are all stories about the center of power. How do people show their power, right? And so if Rupert Murdoch in the UK can try to discredit the people who are discrediting the royal family, that's actually having an impact on the power structure. But and here in this country too, Dominion lawsuit, we saw Rupert Murdoch's minions basically casting distrust on the voting system, the actual voting system, advocating for harassment of even people who worked at the polls, like in the most bare-knuckled way. It was straight out of the Reconstruction after the Civil War. But keep your eye on the trends of people that are running away from being registered Republicans and registered Democrats. People are running away from that. There's more registered independent voters in almost every part. Well, it's certainly where we live in Oregon, but on the national level too. And part of that is confusion, but part of it is, we're not stupid. And I mean, there are some people, especially boomers, right? I'm the last boomer. I'm at the very end of the boomer generation. But we're seeing a lot of people that are older people who feel that they're going to lose something they're going to miss out, or that they're not being respected or something like that. The newer, younger generations are not, they're more sophisticated. They have a better sense of where to get more information, and they're just not necessarily buying the hype. And sometimes the best strategy is to focus on the young people and to make sure that they have what they need. They've got the training, the logic, the education, the support, even, right? To be able to build something that makes more sense. And we do see that happening in a slow way, but we really can focus on that. When I'm talking about this event I'm looking around at all my notes, talking about this event I'm going to have in San Francisco next week, World Press Freedom Day. I feel really strongly about encouraging teenagers to pick up these tools. I feel strongly about encouraging teenagers who, in Portland, there was another just brilliant walkout of the schools last week in support of climate revolution, right? So there really are, the younger generations are smarter than my generation. And I think that making sure that they're not burdened by debt, killed by preventable diseases. What does it even mean that 1.5 million people died that didn't need to die of COVID? What impact did that have, man? And a lot of those people were conservative voters watching Fox News too. That's being studied, and look for that one. There's even research out there that has been able to parse political party affiliation in locations with COVID rates. So, I mean, this stuff, it's life and death. It really is. And we can focus on our younger generations and make sure that they have a better grasp, and stop burdening them with that debt, and let them have a place to live that they can afford. Some of it is, if we can tune out some of the noise. I hate to say that. I'm making noise right now, but we really can focus on key parts of this. And I don't know if the world should be progressive. I don't know if the world should be conservative. I'd like the world to be compassionate, logical, and kind, and stop being so fake and greedy. Why does Oregon have so many billionaires? What is their place in evolutionary society? I don't know. But I mean, I do think there are things we can do, but it's hard to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I love that point though about really like focusing on youth. And I was, again, trying to rein in my own, gloomy cloud kind of perspective to it. Cause I always feel like people kind of like take one of two stances, as either the youth, and they're always on their phones. And granted, I just got done with the residency in the classroom, and there is something to that, but that's another story. Or there's like, the youth are so brilliant, they're going to save us. But a lot of people say that in a way where it's like taking the responsibility off of themselves. Like it's not, hey, these youth are amazing. Now let me work with them, or how can I support them? Because, this is, again, history has repeated itself before. Like there've been a lot of amazing generations who've done a lot of things, but sometimes it feels like there's that disconnect as far as like, we are fighting a monster here. We've all got our roles to play, and we've all, like, especially when it comes to this keep coming back to media literacy. Like they have the tools, they have the creativity and the insights and the ability to use them in a way that I'm not thinking about, in a way that's going to be so much more effective. Let me give you some words about fact checking. That's all. Let me just tell you, hey, there's a site you can go to that can tell you where so-and-so is actually getting produced, where they get the money from, their history of either, retractions or certain errors, all of that. Like let me just give you some tools and, offer, hey, here's whatever mentorship I can have, or in this case, whatever support, or beyond just journalism, like, hey, I'm working with this organization. We can make sure you come in and get breakfast and lunch every day while you're learning these things. So it's not just trying to have you starve and, learn information that you probably don't have not say you probably don't have context for, but, it's not top of the mind if you're at 16 or 17.
Right.
Like all of that can exist. So again, I want to be the person who's just like being the storm cloud on it, you know, but I also just I do worry when I hear some people be like, yeah, the youth are gonna save us, but it feels like they're setting the youth up to try and fail like other generations before, and then be like, well, was it all worth it? It's like, yes. Yes, you know, it doesn't take, not to get on my soapbox because I've already been ranting right now for a bit, but it's just like none of this exists, you know, the energy isn't static. And it's not fair that you always have to fight like this. But unfortunately, ever people are pushing to, I mean, we're talking about power in all these instances. I'll just bring it back to this like sports media, because again, I talk with people all the time. It's like, why, Bruce, why do you talk about the effects of sports media so much? Because you're consuming it and it's training you to do the things you do in the political media that you can kind of more clearly see the line. I read this New Yorker article about a new book. Let me look it up here because I want to get the title correct, but it was about basically like the history of white owners versus black players in the NBA in terms of labor disputes and how it's affected the coverage. So yeah, it's a book called Blackball by Teresa Runstedler. I apologize to Teresa if I'm messing up her name here. But again, just talking about how so much of the way we've consumed and we talk about like sports is from sources, usually people from the team, usually managers, GMs, people who have an interest in keeping players' wages and shares of, you know, the profits down, of having more control. And that's why a lot of these stories about, well, you get all these stories about you know, scandals, you know, certain players trying to like quote unquote load manage, aka not put themselves in harm for injury and ruining their careers. And yet it's this weird thing where again the default, because we're conditioned this way, is that all this language about, oh, the players are lazy and greedy and all these very, very obvious dog whistles, how people who would otherwise get them or would otherwise get that default to the side of the billionaires in these arguments just because that's the only framing we get of it when we're watching ESPN or Fox Sports. And there's also a whole story about Fox Sports and how that has all come together. Speaking of colonialism, speaking of, we don't have time to get into the history of how in Living Color specifically and Black entertainment generally gave Fox the power to get big sports contracts and then bridge out to, you know, doing Fox Sports TV and Fox News. Again, colonialism, but all this stuff is connected. And like we talked about earlier, before people's heads explode, like, oh my God, it's too much information. Just go back to the power. It's the power.
Yeah. I just want to wrap up and say, for me, like if I was gonna just have final words on this, keep your eye on all the kids that are being forced to give birth that don't have any choice. That's a thing, man. It's getting covered. That's a thing. It's getting covered. All the kids that are being forced to give birth and all the kids that are being denied education and information about race and class in America. That's a good place to start, straight up.
Yeah. So Lisa, thank you. Thank you again for taking the time. Before I let you go, can you remind people of the book and where they can find it? And B, can you tell us the name of the event at World Press Freedom Day, and you know where and when it will be if people are, you know, going to be in San Francisco or would like to travel to San Francisco for this event and for World Press Freedom Day?
My book is A Street Journalist, Understand and Report the News in Your Community. It might look backwards on your screen right now. It is published by Microcosm Books. You can get it at all, many independent bookstores. Powell's and Microcosm also has a bookstore here in Portland. The event is Don't Hate the Media, Become the Media, How Your Local Story Can Inform the World. It's live in person at Bird and Beckett Books and Records, Wednesday, May 3rd at 7 p.m. That's at 653 Chenery Street in San Francisco. And I would love to see you guys. If we can hook up like a live stream of it, we will. But it's very much about trying to get people into Bird and Beckett Bookstore. And thanks for having me. It's always a joy.
Yeah, I could, and probably since I click the record button off, try and harass you about more media literacy talk. But yeah, Lisa Loving, thank you again for taking the time, providing all the insights, giving people a lot of breadcrumbs as far as other stuff they can follow to just, again, understand how the sausage is made because it matters. So yeah, thank you again. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.